Sitting on the Mediterranean, the state of Israel is bounded by the countries of Egypt to the south, Jordan and Syria to the east, and Lebanon to the north. Israel was born of strife after a hard-fought campaign for independence, and has been fighting for survival almost continuously since its conception. Israel is the country of legends. Muhammad ascended to heaven from here. Jesus walked this land. Moses, Peter and Noah are part of this country's history. We start our brief tour at Haifa, Israel's northern capital, third largest city and busiest port. Situated in a broad natural bay between the Mediterranean and Mount Carmel, the city's terraced landscape offers a rich variety of breathtaking panoramas. Dazzling by day, sparkling at night, Haifa is traditional, contemporary, sophisticated and relaxed. It's a winning combination. Above Haifa sit the cool slopes of Mount Carmel. It was from here that Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled here the prophets of Baal. Elijah went before them and said, "How long will you waver between two opponents? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." Nearby a cave is said to have hidden Elijah from the wrath of King Ahab. Today, two Carmelite monasteries share the mountain. A short 1-hour drive over the peak of Mount Carmel brings us to the home of Jesus, Nazareth. He must have known these hills so well, as indeed must he have known the waters of the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee, called Kinnereth in Hebrew, is where Jesus first preached and said to his first two apostles, Simon and Andrew, "Come follow me and I will make you fishers of men." Capernaum, a lake port on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, was a centre for preaching by Jesus. It was a second home for him after Nazareth, and he dwelt here for a considerable period. An ancient synagogue has been found here, dating back to the 6th century, and it's believed to be built over the remains of an even older synagogue. Continuing our journey, we come to the Dead Sea. At 1,300 feet below sea level, it is the lowest place on Earth. Mining the Dead Sea's minerals has long been from Roman times a profitable business. The waters, buoyant with a high concentration of salt, provide remarkable experience to all who swim here. But most visitors come to the Dead Sea for its health-giving properties. Christianity begins here in Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Situated a few miles north of Hebron, Bethlehem is a small town surrounded by open fields. This is modern Bethlehem. White roofs, bell towers, convents and monasteries. The Church of the Nativity dominates the whole area, marking the site of the stable where Mary and Joseph found lodging that first Christmas. The church was built in the 6th century over the grotto of Jesus' birth. This small stone arch leads to the site which the Catholic Church has decided is the place where the manger stood. Marked by a star on the marble floor, this is the site suggested as the birthplace of Jesus. Jerusalem, the eternal city, the capital of Israel. It is the city where David established his kingdom, where Solomon constructed his first temple, where Muslims believe Muhammad ascended to heaven, and it is the place where the greatest drama of history took place 2,000 years ago. Sacred to the world's three great monotheistic religions, Yerushalayim to Jewry, which came first, Jerusalem to Jewry's offspring Christianity, and Al-Quds, the Holy One, to Islam, youngest of the three interrelated faiths. Jews, Christians and Muslims, they are all, as the Arabs say, children of the book. No city has been more fought over, dreamed over, schemed over than this one. By far the best way to see what the city looked like 2,000 years ago is to visit this modern 50:1 scale model of Jerusalem, built in the grounds of the Holy Land Hotel. It's built of wood, stone, copper, marble and iron, the very materials of the original, and based on the best archaeological, topographical, historical and biblical evidence. It was constructed under the supervision of experts from Jerusalem's Hebrew University and is widely regarded as substantially authentic. This was the time of Herod the Great and Jesus. This is also from the time of the burgeoning revolt against Roman rule. This was the revolt that eventually led to the destruction of the temple in the year 70 AD, and following a second revolt in 132 to 135 AD, to the dispersal of the Jewish people to the four corners of the earth. Many of the model's features are recognizable to this day. For instance, the Damascus Gate, as it was later named by the Christians. It marked the start of the road to the Syrian capital. Its Arabic name is Bab el-Amud, the Gate of the Column. The Jews call it Sha'ar Shechem, the Nablus Gate, since the road to Damascus passes through Nablus, which was once the Jewish capital of Samaria. Now the main and most impressive entrance to the old city, the environs of the Damascus Gate are bustling with life and commerce. What the model of Herodian Jerusalem shows, but which of course now only exists in the dreams of the faithful, is the magnificent Second Temple, also known as Herod's Temple, which was destroyed by order of the Roman Emperor Titus in AD 70 to teach the rebellious Jews a lesson they should never forget. Herod was a ruthless tyrant despised by his fellow Jews for his Romanized ways. But he was a master builder. Some of the stone blocks in the retaining wall of Temple Mount weighed 80 to 100 tons, and that in an age without machinery. All that remains of the temple today is a section of the western retaining wall of the original Temple Mount, and it is sacred to observant Jews the world over. To non-Jews, it's known as the Wailing Wall. Against the south wall of the temple in King Herod's time was a flight of broad stone steps, allowing pilgrims access to the mount. For centuries these steps were hidden from view under tons of earth and rubble. Historians believe these to be the very steps Jesus climbed when he visited the Hebrew temple, and therefore here that he famously lost his temper when confronted by the sight of the money changers and merchants. Overturning their tables, he shouted, "It is written, my house shall be a house of prayer. You have made it a den of robbers." Around the area where this took place, today we find the Mosque of Al-Aqsa. On this same Mount Moriah, Abraham had prepared to sacrifice Isaac, Solomon had built his temple, and Jesus had amazed the rabbis with his wisdom. The site of the ancient Hebrew temple is today occupied by the Dome of the Rock, one of Islam's most important mosques, built at the spot where they claim Muhammad ascended to heaven. Jesus' disciples had remarked about the beauty of the ancient temple. He replied, "As for what you see here, the time will come when not one stone will be left sitting on another." This Islamic monument is a witness to the fulfillment of that prophecy. The dome itself is an architectural and artistic masterpiece. Built in the year 72 of the Islamic calendar, that is 691 to 692 AD, it is the oldest surviving Muslim monument and was constructed by the Umayyad Sultan Abdul Malik. As the focal point of the Temple Mount, it is also the visual focal point of Jerusalem as a whole. The building is an octagon, crowned by a dome made of copper, gilded with gold leaf. The interior of the dome is covered by mosaics, produced by Syrian Christians. This structure marks the traditional site where Jesus and his apostles celebrated the Last Supper. It is located on Mount Zion, where Christian and Jewish holy sites fill the summit. This was also where Mary spent the rest of her life. The structure escaped the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and was later built upon by the Byzantines. Below this hall, the visitor finds the traditional tomb of King David. After the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples headed for the Mount of Olives. They walked into this valley on the way to Gethsemane. Botanists have proved that some of these olive trees, or at least their root systems, were here when Jesus passed between them. Jesus preached some of his most important sermons from the Mount of Olives, and here wept over the coming destruction of Jerusalem. To step from the bustle of Jerusalem into the tranquility of Gethsemane is to enter a different world. Jesus entered this garden knowing full well he would be betrayed by Judas Iscariot, then arrested, summarily tried and put to death on the cross. The Bible tells us he cried out, "Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." After his arrest, the mob took Jesus up these very steps to the house of the high priest Caiaphas, where now stands the church of St. Peter Gallicanthus. It was here that Peter denied him, fulfilling Jesus' words, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." Jerusalem streets have the look of a typical American or European city of comparable size, except perhaps that the mixture of nationalities and cultures that make up modern Israel give the place a rather more cosmopolitan feel. Western Jerusalem's street food market, Mahne Yehuda, is quite different in atmosphere from the souks of the old city, and, if anything, less expensive. Its streets are lined with stalls, laden with fruit, vegetables, cheeses, pickles and biscuits. Israel's modernistic Knesset or parliament is situated well away from the ancient monuments, on a hill in the western part of the city. These ancient walls mark the beginning of the Way of the Cross, the Via Dolorosa. Jesus made his faithful journey along this road that winds through the streets of the walled city and leads to Calvary. Pilgrims from all over the world still make this journey. Today, the Oriental market along this road is one of the most exotic anywhere. For Christians, Jerusalem's most important site remains the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is built on Calvary, the supposed location of Jesus' execution and burial. In Christ's day, this site lay outside the city walls, beyond the Gate of Judgment, through which he passed bearing his cross on the way to being crucified. Architecturally, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is not as impressive as some of the world's other great places of Christian worship. Ravaged by fire in 1808 and by earthquake in 1927, it is a jumble of architectural styles, marred and cluttered by scaffolding and protective metalwork. It was Saint Helena, mother of Constantine, the first Christian emperor of Rome, who built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Construction began in 346 AD and was completed in 348. This altar marks the place where it was suggested the cross of the crucifixion once stood. In front of that altar is the stone of unction. Particularly intense are the devotions of the pilgrims here. This is where they believe the body of Jesus was laid to be washed, anointed and bound in his winding sheet after being taken down from the cross. On the wall behind the stone is a splendid mosaic mural depicting the scene which today's pilgrims recall and symbolically reenact. The body was then taken to the tomb. This, the Church would have us believe, is the site of his burial and resurrection. It is the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. He and other disciples took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and placed it within the new rock-hewn tomb and rolled a great stone across the entrance.